All right, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like we're back here at Mission Foods Turn 1 here at Watkins Glen International for the Hilliard U.S. Vintage Grand Prix. Group 6 and 12A coming up next. And look at that, right there is Scott Borchetta, I believe our 3-time Group 6 champion. You can see the number 1 there, racing in honor of Bobby Unser, his good friend. Scott had a really good showing today in TA2 as well, and in our Group 10 GT class. Then there is the Dr. Claire Schwindeman. This guy here, I actually had to kind of yell at him here at Watkins Glen a few years ago, and I don't yell at our drivers a lot, but he is by nature a neonatologist. He works on premature infant babies in the hospital, sometimes still in the womb, but he's under the car getting his hands all dirty and burnt. And I'm like, dude, those hands are way too valuable to be doing that.
That's one of my favorite names, Taco Lobster Racing, and this one, Prancing Moose Racing.
Prancing Moose.
Yes.
Do you guys have a grid sheet for this group? I don't see a grid sheet for Group 6. Jonathan says, hold on. I know that car. That is Mike Donahue. That was one of our V-Rock winners from years ago, co-driven by Matty Brabham, but that is a beautiful Chevrolet Corvette. Mike Donahue, this is all top of my head. Oh, here we go. Here's a grid sheet. Beautimous. Gary Moore.
Gary Moore right there in the Shelby GT350.
Yeah, we usually see him in that Mercury Cougar.
Right.
I haven't seen him out here in a while on this. That is an actual GT350. Gary Moore from Pennsylvania, 1965 Shelby GT350. Gary, thank you for bringing that out here in the American racing colors of blue and white. Then we've got David Needell in a 1968 Chevrolet Corvette Roadster. Ray Zisa in that yellow Chevrolet Corvette there, you can see right by all of our banners. Stephen Coleman in a Group 6 Ford Boss 302 1970. Looks like the Bud Moore cars of Parnelli Jones and George Fulmer. David Agritellis in a 1974 Porsche IROC RSR. Scott, I hope you have a lot of information about the IROCs from the RSR days here in a little bit.
I'm ready for you.
Art Habert in a 1967 Jaguar E-Type. Kyle August in a Ford Mustang. And again, if you're watching on Speed Tour TV YouTube, let us tell us what you're wanting to see here. You know, we didn't get to show Todd Treffert there in the front, but that is a 1974 Porsche 911 turbocharged Group 6 AP car. Jim Heck, 1964 Chevrolet Corvette. Brett Seafuse, 2005 Ford Mustang. Glenn Chaplin in a Ford Mustang Boss 302R. Daniel Schlickenmeyer, 2007 Ford Mustang. John McCormick, there he goes in that beautiful Ford Cobra. John Hammergren, BMW MT2 CSR from 2020. Bill Glavin, 2020 BMW M2 CSR. These two gentlemen think they have found the key to vintage racing. Automatic transmissions and air conditioning in these two cars. Craig Hillis, 1992 Porsche 968, very fast. Cliff Ryan, 1965 Ford Mustang. Randy Williams back with us in another E-Type from 1967. Francis Florido, 1986 Porsche 911. Rick Ortman out there in that 1988 Chevrolet Corvette. He is a Group 12 champion from years past. Keith Dunbar, 1971 Jaguar E-Type V12. Stephen Smith, Chevrolet Corvette. Chris Evans back out there with us in a 1967 Chevrolet Camaro. Larry Dupuis, I'm sorry, Larry. Dupuis?
Si.
Okay, Larry Dupuis. Should be in a French Bugatti. 1970 Ford Mustang Boss. Thomas Lane in a 1995 Ford Mustang. Colby Hillman, 69 Chevrolet Corvette. Brian Watson in a 1986 Porsche 944. Richard Payne, Chevrolet Corvette Roadster. There's a joke in there somewhere, Richard. James Aquilano in a Shelby Cobra. Ronald Lombardo in a Ford Mustang. And then I flipped the page over. Emmanuel Moriea in a 1965 Ford Mustang. Corey Barrick in a Ford Mustang. And Paul Fasella in a Ferrari 355 challenge car. That rounds out the field.
This should be interesting. The battle, but most likely between Scott Borchetta, who has multiple wins here, as we have documented several times, had a 32-win race streak broken in Indianapolis later this year. But between the horsepower of the Corvettes and the handling of the Porsche 911, Todd Treffert, a very established driver, and that Porsche 911 Turbo, obviously the handling of the brakes will go the way of the Porsche, horsepower going the way of the Chevrolet Corvettes. As I believe we're getting ready for the green flag here, Ben.
All right, look what happens here. Todd Treffert, Scott Borchetta. Todd Treffert is setting up this car to try to beat Scott Borchetta. Let's see if he can get that turbo spooled up to take the green flag. We're flashing yellow. It's going to be a late green. Watch the flag stand on the left. And he throws the flag out. Let's see what happens here. Lots of cars pulling out. Side by side is Scott Borchetta and Todd Treffert, followed by Claire Schwindeman and Mike Donahue. Side by side into one.
Treffert has a line, though.
He does. Oh, and the Jaguar goes side by side with that Porsche. Jim Heck and that 64 Corvette. But let's see what's happening at the lead as we show green there. And the flag's not sure what's going to happen. See if Scott Borchetta can take the lead into Big Machine Vodka Spike Coolers bus stop. What's happening up front? Oh, Todd Treffert's going to have him coming into Big Machine Vodka Spike Coolers. That Porsche should be able to outhandle the Corvette, but the Corvette's going to have him on the long bits. Look at him just throwing it over there. Scott Borchetta not used to being in second place in Group 6 with SVRA. Let's see what they've got as they come around the last part of this Big Machine Vodka Spike Cooler carousel. It's Todd Treffert in that 1974 Porsche 911. Porsche kind of came into sports car racing as that American muscle car killer. And let's see what happens here as they come down to the toe of the boot.
This should be Chevrolet Corvette's territory on the long straightaways. Again, the horsepower of the Corvette, Borchetta, and his very accomplished driver. Todd Treffert is too. He has a lot of experience in Porsches of varying types and productions, but this long straightaway should play into Corvette's hand. But again, you're going to get towards the turn 10 and 11, the handling part, that's going to play into the hands of the Porsche.
But look at that. I was expecting Todd Treffert to really outbrake Scott Borchetta there, but it didn't really happen. Scott stayed right with him. It's really fun to watch from these drone shots because you can see where the Corvette's going to have the advantage and where the Porsches are going to have the advantage. But man, here's two really good drivers and very different equipment running up front. And there's Claire Schwindeman right there in third, hanging on, Dr. Claire.
Now it's interesting. Schwindeman usually by this time has dropped quite a ways back behind Borchetta, but here he's hanging right with him.
And there's Cord. I'm not going to be able to say his last name. I'm sorry, Cord. 2002 Chevrolet Z06. Now this is Group 6 and Group 12. The more modern cars are Group 12, and the vintage cars, 1972 basically or older, are the vintage cars, the Group 6 cars. But they're so equally matched and yoked, that's why they're on track together as we watch a modern Mustang. And look at that E-Type coming in here. Those Donovan E-Type Jaguars are just works of art.
They're beautiful. I was going to say the Jaguar might have the handling on them because that was one of the distinguishing features of the Jaguar E-Type, as it was known in England, or XKE here in the U.S. But it has a V12 engine in it, and you might see him actually challenge that more modern Mustang. Look at this race between Borchetta, the GT champion, Bell Helmet champion, and GT point leader. But he is not used to following a Porsche of all things.
And we saw Craig Hillis really moving up in that Porsche 968.
And that was the development of the Porsche 944, as the 924 developed into the 944, and then the 968 was the next evolution of that.
And the 968 kind of resembles the 928 to me in the front end. But look at this. Scott Borchetta somehow making it up in kind of the braking and turning areas, which shouldn't be happening in a Corvette. Now this is, watch for him to kind of try to outbrake here with Treffert. But now when Treffert, you can see when he gets that turbo spooled up, he really gets after it. And once that turbo spooled up, they're probably pretty equally powered.
Yeah, but it takes a little bit of while for that Porsche to spool up that turbo. And although at the time, Borchetta has his foot planted firmly on the floor in that big 350 cubic inch Chevrolet Corvette. It's like one of the older Chevrolet Corvettes there as a number 30.
So Todd Treffert's best time is a 2:02.751. Scott Borchetta's is a 2:03 976. But that's not right yet. They haven't crossed the line yet, so it hasn't regrouped. No, it's a 2:01 804. So Scott Borchetta now is a faster car than that Porsche of Todd Treffert. As we look there, Gary Moore versus Mike Donahue. These two have been racing against each other for quite a while.
Yeah, Gary Moore is in one of the Shelby GT350s that rolled off the assembly line at San Jose, California, and was shipped immediately to the Shelby factory, where they installed the factory racing equipment. It became a GT350R. It was designed specifically to win the SCCA B Production National Championship, and it did that. It won for 3 years in a row.
David Agratellis there in that 901 shop. Porsche IROC RSR. Brady builds some unbelievable Porsches there at the 901 shop. But tell us about the specialty with these Penske IROC cars.
Well, first of all, the 901.
Oh, we've got a yellow flag here. I'm not sure what the yellow flag is for. I hope that Ray Zisa sees it. They're through it, so I'm not sure what they're showing that yellow for, but I'm not sure if we just saw a pass under yellow or if they were through it and it was back to green flag racing there. I'm not hearing anything coming through the radio. Sorry about that. Let's go back to the IROCs.
The 911 RSR, actually that was developed as a 901, but Peugeot claimed rights to any 3-digit number that had a 0 in the middle. So Porsche used the next number up, which was a 1, became the 911. This RSR, the IROC series, was developed by Lynn Terry, Mike Phelps, and Roger Penske, and he contracted with Porsche for 15 identical 3-liter Porsche Carreras. When they came to the shop, they were painted in very bright colors because they wanted maximum TV exposure. This particular Porsche RSR, I believe, was driven by George Fulmer in the IROC series, and they were all about making these cars identical. And the drivers, when they showed up at the track, they never knew which car they were going to drive. What they did was they'd go up to a hat, and it had the numbers of the cars, and the drivers would pull out a number, and that's the car that they would drive. But the Porsche was the IROC car to have in the first 2 years, and then they switched to Chevrolet Camaros only because they felt that the TV audience in America would identify more with an American car, which was the Camaro. This Porsche RSR Carrera makes a lot of horsepower, and it is a very fast car in the hands of David Agratellis.
There's Ray Zisa there. Personally, you can hear him really laying down some rubber and squealing their tires here. Unbelievable as they come into Franklin Road Apparel, turn 11 down the front straight. Oh, and here's the leaders. Look at this, coming into Big Machine Vodka Spike Coolers. Todd Treffert still over Scott Borchetta, but Scott Borchetta is a very calculating driver. He's probably looking at where he's stronger, where Todd is stronger, and trying to put together a lap here.
Looked like he'd actually closed up on him when we first went into the camera angle, but then they went into that bus stop, and that Porsche handling lengthened that lead out a bit. And Claire Schwindeman is hanging tough right there in 3rd overall. Both Borchetta and Schwindeman are in the same 6 GT class. Borchetta with a huge lead due to all of his wins this year, but Claire Schwindeman in 6 GT is hanging right with him. And those two identical 69 Chevrolet Corvettes, the base engine was a 327, but they changed it in that 1969 year to a 350. Also, an all-aluminum ZL1 engine was available that produced 430 horsepower. But these have the 350 cubic inch engine in them.
I think Todd Treffert, when he watches back at this, is going to be surprised on how well Scott Borchetta's Corvette is braking coming into the heel of the boot there. My mind can't wrap around how well he's hitting on the brakes and staying up with that Porsche. Now let's see what happens when they get on the straight here.
I'm sure when he glances in the mirror, this is Treffert, that he's surprised that Borchetta is still there. Now they're going to come up on some traffic. That's going to play into this possible lead here for Treffert over Borchetta. Always important as to where you catch traffic. First car is usually always seen by the cars that you're overlapping. Second car sometimes not so much.
Just getting word from our producers that Scott Borchetta just put out the fastest lap, so this is going to go at it here. As the board is showing us, this is the final lap.
And it's been a horsepower versus handling, just as we previewed, Ben. The handling of the Porsche, along with their legendary brakes, against Borchetta. Look at Borchetta zeroing in on Treffert.
I think I just saw his blow-off valve release something out underneath the car there as he came into the braking zone. a little big spark maybe out of the valve and the turbo there. So they're both winding these things down, and Scott Borchetta does not like to come in second place.
He's a little bit too far behind to possibly make a move at the next
but
turn.
We've got lap traffic.
Yep.
It may be the worst spots. Oh, gentlemen, be careful.
And again, they're going to see Treffert. That's that white Porsche, and they usually see the first car, but Borchetta is going to have to be the one that's going to be really careful. He's going to be trying to catch Treffert, plus trying to plan his move in traffic.
Todd Treffert comes inside. Scott Borchetta takes the outside, weaves through the cars. They're in their own race. They were in their own race, looking at each other, had no idea these cars were coming up. Both gentlemen take a big risk. Scott Borchetta is getting the advantage on Treffert. Treffert had to go into the grass on the inside at the toe of the boot. Not recommended as they come into WeatherTech. Turn 9, and I think is that
a little bit more traffic in front of him.
And they're behind John McCormick. He lets them go. He sees them. There's the BMWs. He's got his warning flashers on.
Weaving in and out
They're
of traffic.
seeing what's going on. I'm sure he's talking to the radios as they come into Franklin Road Apparel. Turn 10 and 11. It looks like Treffert's going to have it in that Harley-Davidson Porsche, number 41, 1974 911. Coming up to the checkered flag, and ladies and gentlemen, waving the Sunoco flag to Todd Treffert. Congratulations, Todd Treffert. Scott Borchetta, second place. That's the first time I think we've seen that this year, right? No, it's the first time we've seen him finish in second place. Yeah, wow. Todd Treffert really put together some fantastic laps there. Scott Borchetta, I raise my hat to you also, going through that lap traffic at the toe of the boot. Not ideal, but here we go back to Ron Zisa. Some fantastic images we're getting here from our green light crew. It's just racing throughout the field. Group 12, Group 6, there's that IROC RSR coming through.
Zisa using up all the track. He went all the way out, using all the way into the rumble strips, trying to carry as much momentum as he could through that turn. Zisa, the point leader in Group 12. And as you mentioned, I believe, Ben, multiple championships by Ray Zisa. That Porsche 911 IROC RSR coming through. There comes Ray Zisa in the number 4 Chevrolet Corvette. And trying to get by a Porsche, just like back in the days in Watkins Glen, Corvette versus Porsche. Well, we had a fantastic race between Scott Borchetta and Todd Treffert. Treffert is an amazing driver. He sometimes does not get the recognition of some of the other drivers here in the vintage classes, but Treffert, who has a lot of different Porsches and races them in many series across the country, and he showed you why he is such a good driver. He had to drive the wheels off of that Porsche to keep Scott Borchetta right behind him.
Well, Ben's gone down to deal with the podium, and there's your check on the results for Group 6 and Group 12A. Treffert with a great win over, a rare win over Scott Borchetta. Schwendemann in 3rd place, Kerstadt, Moore, Donahue, Seafuse, Coleman, Agretilis, I think that's right.
Agretilis.
Thank you. And Zisa. But what about the day itself? Your thoughts, Scott, just summing up what has been a long day of great racing.
Oh, well, you know, Historic Trans Am is my favorite. It's got to be, just because I grew up watching these cars. I grew up watching the original drivers, and to see these cars back in their original liveries and driven as hard as they could be. I mean, that was one of the best races that we have seen, I believe, all weekend so far.
Well, Scott Conway, thank you so much. My thanks also to Ben Sissel and to the entire Greenlight team. Well done to all our cameramen. You're doing a great job all day long, bringing you the action around the world of the Franklin Road Apparel Classic. We'll be back tomorrow from the Glen once again as we bring you more action from both Trans Am and the Speed Tour of SVRA. There'll also be the Bugattis in action as well. But the feature race, here's the TA, XGT, SGT and GT race. That's coming up local time at, let's see, 11:05 Eastern New York time. So put that in your diary and come and join us then. Once again, my thanks to everyone involved here. I'm Jonathan Green. Join us tomorrow for all the action.
Keeping your pride and joy perfect is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Start with Slick Mist Speed Wax. Simply mist on and wipe off for a professional detail or shine. For your tires and trim, there's Lucas Slick Mist Tire and Trim Shine. Spray on and wipe off for better than new look. Then finish her with Lucas Slick Mist Interior Detailer. Just spray and wipe. Easy. Use Lucas Slick Mist Car Care products and she'll never look better. Fast, easy, and professional. Really, it's sort of like having an extra set of hands. Or 3.
Hungry for SVRA action? Well, the best way to enjoy classic auto racing is with a delicious classic from Mission Foods. Green flag your race-watching snacks with Mission's mouth-watering race day recipes. Try some of our tasty tacos, piled high nachos, fresh chips with guac, and more. So gear up your ride and fuel up those stomachs with delicious Mission Foods. Now that's too fast, too tasty.